Welcome to Soul Soldier Speaks, where we honor the warrior within each of us on life's battlefield. I'm your host, Lindsay Taylor. Here we stand with those on the front lines of their own lives, those battling suicidal thoughts, addiction, grief, and life's hardest challenges. We honor the loved ones standing beside those struggling and remember those we've lost. Each episode, we delve into raw, unfiltered conversations and stories of people who faced the darkest of nights and emerged with healing, transformation, and hope. Together, we will navigate the battlefield, focusing on the battles that save and restore. This podcast is more than stories. It's a rallying cry, an army of soul soldiers reclaiming the light one story at a time. Together, we rise. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Soul Soldier Speaks podcast. I have Glenn back again for part 2. So I actually have not released this part 1 yet, but by the time you see this, part 1 will be out. I spoke with Glenn back in, I think it was like the end of January or early February. And you had said some really powerful things in the episode that we did together. And I'm like, I have to have you back on for part 2. And it just timed out. I always say divine timing. I think it was the right, it timed out well in that I'm just doing the part 2 without having even posted part 1 yet, because I think it's meant to go together. And I think what we're going to talk about today is really, really important and is going to speak to men out there. So we'll dive into it, but I just thank you. Thank you for coming back.
No, absolutely. We'll do 3, 4, 5, whatever calls, right?
Right, we might have part 3, 4, 5. This is so true. So today I really, what had stood out to me in our episode last time was you had mentioned when you were sharing your struggle with that night that you had contemplated suicide, and you were saying that when you had come out and shared it, it was a really big deal for you because you were worried that you were bringing shame to your family name, or you felt you were bringing shame to your family name. And that really hit me, that I think that there's this, idea in society with masculinity that it's not safe to show those types of struggles, to show emotion. And so that's what really stood out to me. And I know working with teenage boys that a lot of teenage boys feel that same way, that they can't show their emotion, that it's weak. We have this idea around it, this idea that we've created in society around masculinity and showing emotion and weakness and all those things. And so that's why we're having you back for part 2 today, because I think it's so, so important to speak to the men out there.
Love it. Let's go. I'm excited.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to go back to that moment because, hopefully everybody, I highly encourage you, if you have not seen part 1, check that out first, because this will make more sense. But you had talked about that moment that you shared. What did it feel like to carry that pain alone, like that secret, if you will, that you said you had carried before speaking it out loud?
For me personally, it was just something I had suppressed and kind of just stored away. And so, I think as we mature as men and women, we can look back and we can see the consequences of suppressing or avoiding or resisting our truths and our stories and our emotions. But at the time, it just seemed normal, if I'm being honest. And so,
Mm.
really, really quick timeline. Christmas Eve, I have this, like, I don't know if I'd even call it a suicide attempt, but I had a gun in my hand raised to my head. And then in 2017, I'm telling the story I would never share. And it was an impulsive release. And then after I told the story, that's when I kind of shared, hey, I don't know what kind of shame I'm going to bring on this my family name and how disappointed they will be in me. But there was some amazing relief on the other side of it that was a surprise.
Wow. So where do you think that idea came from, of like this idea that you were going to bring shame to your family name? Like, where do you think that began?
I think it probably begins even in our childhood in general, and I can
Mm,
speak to just myself, but just reading our parents' faces, and then when they're disappointed in us, then we seek to hide. And any hiding is because we're perhaps creating shame or feeling shame, or we're feeling guilt, and then it turns to shame because we are hiding, parts of ourselves. And this isn't my parents' fault by any means. I mean, we don't know what our kids are experiencing, and we do our best, and we can go down that road too. But I think it just came from a natural, order of things where it's like, I want to hide the parts of me that are embarrassing. So, yeah, that's my simple answer.
Mm. So growing up, like, what idea did you have in your mind about what it means to be a man?
Um, I mean, my idea of being a man is someone who's strong, has big hands, capable. I had a very loving father too. I mean, hugs. He was probably sad the day I stopped kissing him. You know what I mean? And I know in our day and age, maybe it shouldn't be, inappropriate, but our culture has evolved to where even families kissing each other is often weird. But my dad was very, very loving, and we would wrestle and we would cuddle. Like it was, and it sounds really maybe odd for a grown man to say, yeah, I used to cuddle with my dad when I was a boy. And, I think that was my dad's way of giving love, receiving love. Um, and so to answer your question, my definition of being a man was just someone who handled it, someone who shouldered the burdens of his life, maybe even his wife and his kids, and he just owned it and he figured it out along the way. And yeah, so someone who just carries it, and
Mm.
oftentimes
Mm.
it. I think my dad set an example for good or for bad to kind of carry it alone. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah. So how did that shape the way as you got into adulthood, the way you coped with pain and struggle and sadness and vulnerability? Like how did that shape the way that you coped?
yeah, I would actually cope by creating more pain and more adrenaline. So my outlet was hurting myself in the gym, hurting myself with long hours of labor and work. It was, and I say hurting myself because I'm a guy and I like pain. I like what pain means because pain means growth inside of the gym. And then my other outlet was just caffeine and adrenaline. And, adrenaline has gotten me in trouble quite a bit with the activities I've chosen. And so those were my outlets to push back into the pain and then create pain, and kind of that negative self-talk where it's like, just suck it up, loser, pussy, like whatever that man talk is. And there's obviously an elevated way to do that, but at the time that's what worked for me. And ironically, that pushing into pain and adrenaline is what created so much unnecessary pain in my life. I've probably had over 20 surgeries at this point. I've almost died a couple of times, and I've had a lot of fun, but it's had its consequences in how I process that shouldering.
Totally, totally. Um, why do you think so many men, because I think truly what you're saying, so many men can relate. And so why do you think so many men can relate to this almost suffering in silence or suppressing or like you said, turning to other things just to create almost like more pain, right? To deal with the pain that was inside of you. Why do you think so many men suffer like that?
For one, it kind of works. It kind of works
Mm,
until it doesn't. And so for those who are familiar with like the David Goggins approach, it's an outlet for us to fight back. It's a, David Goggins runs at 2 in the morning, and as he's running by people's homes, he's collecting their souls. Like he just has these like crazy dark thoughts to kind of empower himself into action. And then there's these crazy consequences where his toenails are falling off because he doesn't know where else to put these emotions. And you know, I think a lot of men can identify with that because it's kind of what our culture has taught, and it really does work as an outlet. It's better than sex, drugs, and rock and roll and gambling and all the things. And so we're able to create positive results to a point by pushing and creating that pain and that tension and that fierceness. And so, where we get ourselves in trouble, I think, is when we don't take it to a higher place and we don't let go of these old patterns. And then all of a sudden we have lots and lots of arrivals and we just never are satisfied. We never are able to get into, extreme presence. And
Mm.
because we're always putting our pain into more pain, we never get to evolve and make peace with it. And so, a big part of my work, both personally and with clients, is teaching men how to sit in that tension and not do anything. And oftentimes that's the hardest part because we're always trying to put that energy somewhere else and transmute that energy, and it works, but it's just like it creates so much exhaustion and confusion. And then eventually a man just needs to get into the cave and sit there and get really, really comfortable with the tension of the emotions. And, some people call it doing their shadow work, um, their intrinsic, deep spiritual, um, soul healing work. And there's so many unknown markers on that trail that really scare a lot of men back into, hey, this isn't working anymore, and they can't stand that tension in between, and they go back to
Mm.
what was working before, and now they've ran away from the growth that is at their fingertips, like it's right there, and they just don't know how to hang in there. So yeah, I mean, that's what men are missing out on when they continue to transmute pain into more pain.
Mm. What was the shift and like the turning point for you in all this, Glenn? Like, how did you go from some of those, your own struggles with that, to transmuting this, right? And to learning how to sit in the tension? What was your own journey with that?
Yeah, that's a like 4-hour question because this is this is kind of one of those. I mean, there's a little sign behind me that says one day, one life. And how I did it is just one moment at a time, one feeling at a time, one day at a time. And what I had to make peace with is kind of this situation where past choices that had created regret in my life, I had to make peace with those somehow. Then I also had to make peace with the fears of the future, all the things that I was trying to mitigate the risk for in life, and I had to just get really, really present. And what's really interesting about life is every time we reach this arrival or this peak or whatever the metaphor is in our journeys, there's something undoubtedly coming, and it's a new life circumstance. And so,
Mm.
I reference a really bad mountain bike accident I had almost 2 years ago, and I was at the top of my game at that point. Like, I would snap my fingers and I could create the wildest results. And I was winning and things were amazing and I was having challenges, but I could just look at them from a lens like, dude, this is so fun. And the circumstantial change was I almost died. I was in bed for 6 months, broke neck, ribs, back, destroyed my dominant arm. All my hobbies are gone. My ability to provide as a man what I can do and what I find meaning in completely gone. Everything has been broken in my life. Finances, even my relationships have been pushed to the extremes, and now I'm finding myself in this new situation, completely broken, and having to go through this whole journey all over again because it's something I'm not familiar with. So it's crazy because men, women, everybody's going through these things they've never done before. Call it financial stresses, business stresses, their kids are having problems, marital problems, cancers, like you just name the life circumstance, and almost everybody we know is having these challenges that are exposing them. And if we can't sit
Hmm.
tight in the tension and process those emotions, then we start drifting or buffering we start trying to cope with things so that we can avoid these emotions. We get ourselves into trouble as men using pornography, alcohol, drugs. Even our hobbies can turn extreme. Maybe we stay at work instead of dealing with things at home. We go to the gym
Mm.
2, 3 times a day. We watch ESPN all day. Like there's so many ways for us to avoid the work, and it just creates a bigger and bigger snowball problem. So teaching myself and others in these new situations how to process the emotions and pains is really really rewarding, but there's always a point where it's like, man, this I don't know if this personal development stuff is worth it because of how much tension and how aware I'm getting of these emotions. And that's that void I was referring to, where men often go back to what was comfortable and they miss out on the growth.
So true. How do you walk men through that? How do you help them? What actually, let me back up for a minute because
Yeah,
I think this
totally.
part's really I think this part's really important. You talk about sitting in the tension. What does that really do for people? I think we need to capitalize on that just a little bit more.
Yeah, I could hear, myself even 5, 10 years ago, like, dude, Glenn, what does that mean?
Right.
And I I think sitting in that tension is realizing that, hey, there's some things physiologically going on with me, and my body's literally trying to communicate with me. Like, your body's a supercomputer, your mind's a supercomputer, and everything in this world is designed to suppress it. Everything in this world is
Mm.
is designed to help you escape this magnificent vessel that is here to tell you everything you need to know. And if we're not in tune with that because of how it feels, then we're completely missing the point. So with men, an easy analogy is like, hey, your emotions are simply the oil light on the dashboard of your truck.
Mm.
Like like if you're feeling sad, all that is your body's way of telling you there's something going on either in your mind, in your heart, or in your body, and you've got to romance that. Like you've got to get to know it. You've got to date what all these inputs are. Otherwise, you're going to use pain pills and alcohol and over caffeinate, and you're just going to make a mess of it, and it's really there, it's designed to teach you. So sitting in the tension, what's really powerful for us to see, and maybe more so for men, and I hate putting an umbrella on men versus women, but
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, but a lot of guys are like, they'll experience a deep emotion and will take it layers deep, and I'll be like, what's the worst thing that's happened so far? And they're like, nothing. I'm like, you didn't die, right? And we laugh and we make fun of each other as we're having these like emotional deepening experiences. And it's like, wow, I don't know why I'm so afraid to feel my emotions. And now we're kind of back to where we started, perhaps, where it's like, what's the box or the lenses that men are looking at their emotions through, and why are we making
Mm.
these emotions mean that we're weak?
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head with that, where you're like, sure, ultimately at the end of the day, what we're talking about is human emotions. So
A hundred
male,
percent.
female doesn't matter, right? We all have these struggles. These we all face these struggles when it comes to emotions. And women can do the same thing: suppress, hide, run, escape. I mean, all the things. But I do think it looks different for men. And that's the whole point of what we're speaking to today, really. And this idea that the going back to what you just said at the end, that it's weak, right? And I
Yeah.
think that that is where it gets really dangerous, honestly, for men. um and then you'll find yourself where you're in a spot where you're not living a fulfilling life, all because of this, suppressing of emotion or running from it, turning the other way. And are you really now living, right?
Yep.
Um and I think then it creates all these backfires, right? Like when we suppress, then there's all these other things in our life that starts falling, and taking us down. And so, you know, I just think speaking to the men with this is so so important. What do you feel like men need to know really when it comes to emotion? Like, yeah, there's this societal message and pressure that we put on it, but like, what do you think men need to hear when it comes to this whole topic of healing and being able to express emotion? And what is it really? Not weakness, that what is it, right? When we do process these things, when we do get vulnerable, how do we reframe? How do we re-message this for men?
It's going to come in stages for most men, and this is where perhaps committing to this as a lifelong journey will be helpful, because this isn't like
Mm,
a 12 step, 12-week transformation deal, because as you go layers upon layers, you realize you may have processed some pains from your past, and now all of a sudden life is exposing you to a deeper layer to those pains and those wounds. And so I would encourage men to kind of look at it as, hey, if you like adrenaline and you like going really fast, what if we bridged what your hobbies are to emotions? And what I mean by that is everything is, in my belief, in direct opposition to itself. So if you want to experience a higher, elevated, more passionate, more intimate, more of the good emotions that you have labeled as good, great, and awesome, then you're going to have to expose and entertain, and like I used the word earlier, romance these what we call negative emotions. And what you realize is, because of that direct opposition of things, the more willing you are to experience the depths of these deeper, what we call dark emotions, that that then almost projects you to a higher high. So if you're
mm,
looking at like a roller coaster, it's like, hey, as you become more and more confident with your emotions, you're going to experience deeper ones. And if you don't
mhm,
make that a problem, your ability to ride the ride also increases, you know, equally. And so as I give kind of men analogies, these are things that I have kind of painfully experienced on my own to make myself more and more comfortable with allowing, experiencing, entertaining, even going into the cave of these emotions. And so, I have so many responses with, okay, where do men need to start?
yeah.
And one of the greatest places you can start is somewhere where you have full control, and that is with your own body. So, men, we value things extrinsically, meaning the external world, like how big and nice is the truck, the house, the boats, the motorcycles. I want 5 motorcycles now, and all these stuff and things. We do value our bodies, and some men like the six packs and the muscles and whatever it is that you're chasing. And so the body can be a great place to have a fresh start, because the body is literally keeping the score, as some of these books are. And as you get to know your
Mm,
emotions through food, exercise, sleep, you're literally giving yourself this pathway to feel more energy, to produce more results or fruits, because you're putting yourself in a healthier state. To put yourself in a healthier state, you're going to have to face how you process emotions. Because if you're an eater because of your emotions, now you're going to have to look at, what are these emotions that I'm not processing, but I'm processing them or ignoring them by going to food or alcohol or abusing your body like I did, or anything else. And so you get painfully aware because of your goals physically. And it's just a beautiful door to then bridge to the other areas of your life. So, my most probably tender and most grateful, and also where I've experienced the most pain, is in my marriage. And it is so crazy, but when I made the analogy that, hey, these truthful conversations with Amber, my wife, are just like the gym. It's
mm,
like I go to the gym to face tension and opposition. I want to fail. I literally want to fail. I want nothing more than to get smushed by this weight. But then when I go and have a truthful conversation with Amber, I'm avoidant, I'm defensive, I'm critical, I'm running away from owning my part. I'm not taking any responsibility, and I'm embellishing, but this is true. Like, this is Glenn. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
what I literally did. And I don't know if I shared this in the first episode, but when I did some of my work, I realized that my dark night, I wanted to hurt myself so I could hurt my wife.
Yeah.
Like, and once I saw that, I was just, my jaw hit the floor, and it just like literally throat punched me, that I wanted to end things so I could hurt her for how bad I thought she was hurting me. And really, I'm the guy just like punching myself in the face in the marriage because I don't know how to process these emotions. I don't even know how to vocalize what I'm feeling because I'm just so flooded with so many emotions. And so you take a thing like a man's business and you're like, hey, what have you had to go through? What emotional experiences have you had with your business or with your health? Now let's bridge that over to another area where you want to make progress. And now all of a sudden for my marriage, I help men create a little gym bag that has all their supplements, all these rules, how to rest, how to recover. And essentially I'm just teaching them how to communicate, how to build
Mm.
trust, how to, apologize for crying out loud, how to accept criticism and just let it be her experience with you, even though you might still think she's wrong. And there's so many lessons in that area. But the power for men is that once you tap into your emotions, the sky's the limit on anything and everything you can produce. And extrinsically, we're very driven that way because the world tells us to be so. But really, what matters when you're put in the ground is
Mm.
what impact you had. And
Mm.
so many men want to talk about legacy and leaving behind hundreds of millions of dollars and all this crap. And it's like, no, the intrinsic chase is never ending, like it's eternal. So how many trucks can you buy? Garbage. How many transformations can you have? It's completely endless. So once a man
Mm.
can tap into those emotions, those extrinsic things are going to come naturally, but by then you don't even care. Like, you've literally
Mm.
shed off all these things. Like, I drove a BMW the other day to buy it. It did absolutely nothing for me. And it was a
Mm.
steal of a deal. And I was like, huh. So everything can be an emotional thing, and then your emotions can be your compass. It's like the low oil light on your dashboard saying, "Hey, you sort of need to eat some food, bro." Or, "Hey, you need to tell your wife you're feeling kind of lonely and not make it her fault." Or
Mm.
whatever the case may be. Now, the greatest news ever when you talk about legacy is once you get to know yourself, you can start to look into other men's eyes and you can meet them where they are, and you can just provide space. You can love them and you can be this stoic, dangerous man that's like, "Hey, where are you at?" Like, it's okay to be emotional. And so one danger I'm a little long-winded here, I apologize, but one danger is
No,
that,
this is powerful.
okay, one danger that men are going to run into, and perhaps women too, is that these emotions, when we experience emotions, we always produce results based on what these emotions and energies in our body are, because we take actions from emotion. And so one of the lessons that really needs to go higher level that's being told to men is never make decisions from emotions. Like, have you heard men say that by chance, Lindsay?
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it's crazy because you're making decisions from emotions always. So even if I pull out my don't be a loser voice and I'm like, "Dude, suck it up, let's go." that thought makes me feel determined. Determined is an emotion that I'm taking action from. Is it a clean way to feel determined, or does it have a little bit of layers of negativity? And it's like, well, that's for you to decide. And so as we can get painfully clear on the thoughts that are producing the emotions, those emotions then turn into actions. So
Mm,
when a man is feeling stuck and in shame, what kind of actions is he going to take? Is that going to perpetuate the issue? Yeah, it probably is, because now he's going into hiding.
mm,
If we start studying the energetics and the hurts behind emotions and the energy levels, what we can do as men is we can literally go from shame back to guilt, go up to apathy, depression, get to anger, and we can literally use emotions to climb ourselves out of a hole once we become aware of how powerful these emotions are. And then the sky's the limit
mm,
with what you can produce, because you're no longer creating negative results by suppressing, avoiding, resisting, and reacting to all these emotions. You're literally using emotions to climb this ladder and start producing the actions that you really want to do. And instead of doing it from loser voice, don't feel your feelings, you're doing it from power, and you're doing it from love.
mm,
And now all of a sudden the sky's the limit on what you can produce. And it's really, really powerful. But there is a danger where as men we can get stuck in this void where we've produced all these results, and now that deeper cave shadow work is there, and we tend to run from it. We're like, this feels so foreign, these emotions are feeling really weak, the results in my life have started to slow down. I've heard men say, hey, I feel like I'm expressing my emotions almost like a gal would. Maybe I've learned too much from women. And these are just men trying to make sense of their emotions. And I think the challenge is, or the challenge I would give men is, how can you feel your emotions and still feel manly about it? And once a man can
mm.
grab that, now all of a sudden he welcomes the dashboard, the panel, the compass of all the lights going off. And he's like, okay, how do I want to still feel manly even though I have these emotions that I'm trying to process? And if I'm not careful, I'm going to make it mean that I'm weak, incapable, inadequate. But really, these emotions are what empower you. And it's really, really amazing to watch men kind of embrace that and go for it.
Mm. Oh my gosh. Wow. There's so much you said there. Like to be able to take the emotion and almost it's turn it into your power. Um, that I think what you're speaking to right here is the human experience, right? Like we
100%.
all have emotions. And so
Yeah.
this idea that it's weak for men to have emotion is so silly, actually, when we really like stop and think about it.
Right.
Because you're human. And so you're gonna have emotion. Like that's just part of the human experience. And I always say that the word emotion stands for energy and motion. And
Yeah.
so this idea of what you're talking about allowing it to be felt and moved through, and even this idea that like we have to go to the bottom of our emotions, if you will, to experience the high of them, like we have to have that emotional experience and that riding of that wave to really appreciate, life in its fullness, if you will. um I mean, there's just so much you said that we could unpack that I think is so powerful. But some of what you're saying is just reframing the weak to like, no, this is power. Like now I can take action with these things. I can climb myself out of the cave, if you will, even with these so-called negative emotions. And I like that you were kind of alluding to that, like what we label as negative or what we label as positive. We are actually the ones that give emotions labels. Like we could go down a whole rabbit hole with this, but do we even need to label emotions? Like, I
No,
mean,
in general, we should label them at first, but we should
sure.
seek to graduate the positive, negative emotions as quickly as we can. because
Mm,
that labeling is what creates the avoidance, where it's like, who wants to feel
right.
sad? And it's like, well, your dog just got ran over. Wouldn't you like to be sad for a few minutes? Like, it's totally okay. And so it's
Mhm.
the reframing that you're talking about that's really, really powerful. It's pretty simple too.
Exactly. It is. It's simple, but one of those things that's much easier said than done, right? Like we can
Yeah.
talk about it all day long, but when you're in the emotion, yeah, it's more difficult. But really, our emotions are just meant to be felt and move through us. And so even um sometimes I think when we get stuck in those labels, that's where we get trapped as well. So like you said, being able to move beyond it quicker. Acknowledge what it is and then reframe. So I think that's huge. What you've touched on so many of these things already. Like how can we help men to see the emotional experience of being human differently, right? Other than weak. I mean, I think that's again, I just want to capitalize on it's part of the human experience to have these things. To have emotions, I should say, not these things. So, what do you think? What cultural shift do you think needs to happen for men to feel safe in expressing emotional struggles?
There's so many ways for men to be assisted, but really I think they just need to go into the cave and do the work.
Mm,
Like your wife or your mentor, they can say all the right things, and if you're not taking full ownership of your experience, it's going to be really, really tricky because now you become dependent or childlike. Your wife becomes your mom and she's trying to help you with your emotions. And so that cultural shift, I mean, I watch like Lonesome Dove with my kids, my boys. I have 5 boys, and they don't cry in that movie. And when they do, these little girls at the table are making fun of him like, what's going on? Why is this man crying? And so I think, one
mm,
place to create a cultural shift is for men to, reassociate with what they are making emotions mean, get around other men and be courageous and show
mm,
them what you are going through and how you've conquered. And what's really amazing is you get men around a campfire or something, and one man, if he'll be courageous, all of a sudden the walls start coming down and other men want to be a part of that. And so I think for the my response to changing culture is start with yourself, and then number two is lead by example in your homes and teach your boys, hey, these movies are awesome, and there's a time and a place to suck it up, man up, not cry, get to work. But you do need to come back to whatever indicators on your dashboard were going off so that you can process them. Otherwise, what men tend to do is kind of leave that wake of destruction behind them where
mm,
they never dealt with this, and then we get into, I hate using the word trauma, but we get into generational responses to emotions. And now all of a sudden we are so programmed with generations of responses to emotions. And perhaps our day and age, we have this comfort crisis where we're literally so comfortable that we have all these opportunities to really like pick up all these rocks in our lives and start analyzing and start progressing and start moving towards enlightenment. And I think it's a gift, but we just don't know how to use that gift quite yet. But as men figure it out, it's amazing to watch them literally gift that to other men and challenge them. I've had countless um, uh, several handfuls of times where my wife is like, "You really need to talk to this guy," and I'm like, "Okay, well, why doesn't he talk to me?" And she's like, "Well, he said you're so mysterious, like he can't figure you out." And I'm like, anyway, we could go down a couple of roads with this,
mm-hmm,
but I think men want to be stoic. They want to feel their emotions and they want to process that storm inside of their bodies, but they don't want to show it. And there is value to that, but you still need to process it so that you can do something with it and not continue to perpetuate the cultural problems that we have around emotions. So
Yeah.
start with yourself, start in your home, teach your boys, and then inspire other men to be courageous and do their work is my best response, at least on the fly.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that because I know you have how many kids? 7?
Yeah, I have 5 boys, 2 girls. It's
Yeah.
quite the pack. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad you hit on that piece because I think that is a piece of that cultural shift is how fathers, right, interact with their sons and kind of help uh their sons to feel safe
Yeah.
and in expressing emotion. And it, like if if you guys as fathers are not showing that, then your boys are going to pick up on that and feel the same way that they are not allowed or able, right? And so we have to be that example as parents for our children. And so I do think that that's a huge piece of that cultural shift for sure.
One of the things I've tried to do with my kids, and obviously I don't want to give them the full burden of like being man of the house, but I want to give them little doses of
Yep.
explaining when I am emotional for good or for bad, and
Mm,
just explaining with no excuses, but teaching them, hey, this is how I'm processing, this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm going through, and not putting it on them to fix me or carry it or any of that. And it's similar to the dance you do in marriage, but you can literally do this with your kids once you become confident in what you're doing. And what it tends to happen is men start to get in tune with themselves, and they put out all these fires that were normally causing all these reactions to go off, and they almost get bored. And
mm,
what's really cool is they have this opportunity to create bigger and more audacious goals, whether it's, extrinsically driven, intrinsically driven. They can write books, they can start to help other men or women or their kids or whatever they choose to do. And it's it's uh it's powerful, powerful work when you can sit back and see, wow, this work really, really has completely changed my life. And then you
mm.
start to step in and create the storms and I don't know, there's lots of evolution that's available to all of us as we get comfortable with it.
Yeah. And I love that you point out starting with yourself. Like that ultimately that shift happens when we do our own healing that extends into our families and then into our communities. So I love that you point that out too in the cultural shift is that it all has to start here with me, with you, right? Like with each
Yeah.
individual. So
Yeah.
that's huge.
I
Yeah.
kind of stumbled into this work because I would network with a lot of gals who had done their work through therapy, coaching,
Mm,
personal development, and then their husbands weren't speaking the same language, weren't really looking through life with the same lenses, and they were just staying comfortable in whatever success or lack thereof that they had created. And then these women are giving these really terrible ultimatums and then separating and divorcing, all because these men, they don't know what these wives are asking of them, let alone
mm,
how to do it. And it's amazing to see the unity and the intimacy increase when we as men do the work, whether we're the first one in the partnership or whether we're, inspired by the actions of our spouse, or maybe she's given us this ultimatum that's like, dude, I don't know if our marriage is going to survive unless you start figuring this stuff out. But it's real. I mean, even just yesterday, I had a couple on, and the husband broke down and got emotional for, I can't say it's the first time ever, but his wife texted me afterwards and was like, I have so much hope from doing these 4 or 5 calls with you because I actually got to see a true, authentic version of him. And I'm like, wow, maybe he is capable of expressing his emotions. And where this guy was is he felt like he can't do anything right. And it's like it
mm.
was it was his reality was so sad, but his wife was able to hold space, see him, and be like, okay, let's go somewhere with this. And so this is this will pay off in all the ways. And so I know you do a lot of coaching with like teenagers and whatnot, and so it's
Mhm.
that's a whole
Mhm.
nother department when it comes to helping kids develop and get comfortable with their emotions, and then I don't know where you want to go, but I'm kind of rambling, so you have to tell me
Yeah.
to
No, no. So yeah, what would you say to the teen? I mean, I'm glad that you're taking it there because again, this starts with boys that then grow into teens that then grow into adults, right? And the
Right.
younger we can start with this emotional maturity, if you will, right?
Yep.
I mean, the better. Again, the better off that going back to that cultural shift, that's how we're going to make a change in society. So yeah, what would you say to the teenage, young man,
Right.
that might be struggling with these things too, that like they're having this emotional experience, they're facing these struggles, but they have this pressure on society that it's weak to show it, right? What would you say to the teenage boy?
What I would say is that these emotions are normal. There's a lot of changes that your body is going through, even hormonally, that are going to be new. And anything new, we're not
Mm.
going to know how to do it very well. So, a quick analogy is when my dad was parenting me as a teenager, we would butt heads, and it was kind of like, you know, king of the jungle and this cub that's coming up. And we just, even got physical once. And he would come to me and he'd say, Glenn, I've never been a dad before. And it just gave me such space to be like, oh my gosh, of course, he's not going to be very good at this. Sometime in my 30s, I was dropping the ball, dropping this ball, trying to make up for it by force and working 3 jobs, and the story's long. But I had the thought, Glenn, you've never been a man before. And so I think I would go back in time and I would tell these young men, hey, you've never been a man before. So all the things that you're experiencing are really, really good. These are good things. So if you have tools, what can you build with tools? And they're like, well, I could build a shed, I could build a chair, I could build a motorcycle, I could build all these things. And it's like, look, if I can give you the tools and you can start practicing with these tools, I just want you to trust me that what you can create is a beautiful life that is so full and so robust. So one thing that is
Mm.
kind of important to tell these younger generation is, hey, my wife loves to joke that men aren't emotionally matured until they're or fully developed their prefrontal
No, yeah.
cortex till they're like 25 or something, right? and
Hmm.
and women tend to, by the numbers, develop quicker or younger, or whatever the case might be. Well, there's studies coming out that our development is being stalled by 5 years because of these, right?
Yep.
And so I would be telling these young men, hey, you've never done this before, but
Hmm.
if you don't acquire tools, you're either going to lock these emotions away and they might not come out for decades. But at some point, you've got to use these tools and start practicing how these emotions can really produce some amazing results for you in your life. And then I would start like I do with grown men, is start getting some small wins. Like, hey,
Mm.
let me show you. And if we need to look at other teenagers and the decisions they're making based on their emotions, then we'll look at them and we'll assess with, trying not to judge them, in that way, but just take the facts for what they are and then be like, okay, how does this apply to you? And it's like, what are the results in your life that you don't like? What are the results
Mm.
that you do want to create in your life? And how can we apply some of these tools emotionally to help you get out of the bad patterns into the good ones? And now all of a sudden, they're starting to have a relationship with themselves where they can begin to create some consistencies around their personal commitments. And as soon as they can do that, that trust and that confidence is going to build, and it's going to build. And then when they have a natural setback or they make a mistake, then it's like, hey, what are these emotions teaching us?
Mm.
How long do you want to sit here? Because we can stay in guilt and shame for as long as you want. We can stay in grief for as long as you want. Like, there's a whole grief cycle, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's a grief cycle? Yeah, let me show you. Like, these are the steps to get out of grief. And guess what? Grief comes back all the time. And so sometimes you just have to learn how to shelf the grief and come back to it tonight when it's appropriate to process these emotions. But if you're just going to stay in bed all day, and that's going to perpetuate the problems you're experiencing. So in real time, I would be looking out at others, then bringing it home, giving them confidence by helping them get some wins through making commitments, and then teach them at the end of the day the difference between like discipline and motivation. And
Mm,
so my favorite definition, and it's partially mine, of discipline is the ability to obey yourself, especially when motivation is gone. So
wow,
the
that's good.
ability to obey yourself, especially when motivation is gone. And so help them see their favorite athlete, their favorite author, their favorite artist, musician, whatever it is, and then study the patterns of that person, that man, their own father, for good or for bad, and then try to adopt some of those characteristics and help them develop that discipline muscle, and give them time, like tons and tons of
Hmm.
time. Like these teenager years, you can do a lot of damage, um, but it's a great time to make mistakes too. And so I don't know, as parents, we kind of gotta get more in a support role than trying to teach them at this point. It's like, hey, let's teach them how to use their emotions to create results in their life while they're at home. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
For
that's
sure. Yes. Oh my gosh. No, yeah, 100%. I think the earlier that they can learn these tools, right? It then apply them the better, because now we have, if teenage boys can start tapping into how do I, use these tools, manage my emotions, and imagine what we're going to have as they grow older, as adults, men in our society, right? And I
yeah,
keep, as you're talking, Glenn, what I keep hearing is showing the emotion, like, and not even just showing it, learning how to tap into it, learning how to communicate, learning how to recognize it, I mean, aware of it, I mean, there's so many layers to it. But it's actually the opposite of weak. Like, everything we're talking about takes so much work and so much strength. It's actually much easier to hide and bury and escape. Now, granted, we don't feel good, but it's easier to do those things, right? It's easier to run from it.
yeah,
But then it ultimately ends up, like I said, creating all these backfires in our life. But I just keep, as you're saying it, I keep hearing that you can experience these emotions. You can learn how to handle these. You can learn how to feel them, become aware of them, all these things, and still be a man. That's what I hear you saying. Both of those things can coexist, right? And that's huge. I think that's a big reframe from this idea that, like, oh, just be a man, suck it up, don't show it. Emotions are sign of weakness, like just those silly things that we say, right? But I hear you saying that, like, no, men are humans. So they're going to have emotional experiences. And actually, the more emotionally aware and more in tune and all these things they can be, the better off they're going to be as men, husbands, and just how they are as humans, like how they feel themselves, that like internal self-love, if you will, is going to grow exponentially when they can tap into these things, right?
yeah,
And they can still be a man. Like, those things can coexist. So I just want to highlight that. I think
yeah.
that's
I
really, really
agree.
important.
I think what would be giving kind of an example is
Yeah.
always really powerful. But it's kind of like, say, men, boys, teenagers, they have an experience where something turns to anger, for example. A really easy place for us men to look for anger is when we're driving, like this road rage stuff that's going on, and racing and flipping each other off and tailgating and all this stuff. It's like, okay, what why am I so angry about this guy who's trying to get by me? Like, who knows what he's going through? And so
Mm,
these emotions can be indicators where it's like, okay, I'm in a reactive state, I'm losing control. I really don't want to go to prison over running some guy off the road, but that's happening in the news all the time. And so
mm-hmm,
we don't need to show these weaker or negative emotions in that state. Like, if someone upsets you, I don't want you really crying at work. Like, it's okay if you do, we'll figure that out too, but I want
mm-hmm,
you to still feel like, why were you so embarrassed? Like, what happened? Why do you have such shame around da 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 da? And then take that as a sign to be like, okay, something happened today. I didn't like it. I didn't like how I felt. And your body, like I said early on, it's just telling you, hey, there's a problem here and let's do something with it. And like you're saying, it's like, hey, this is actually what real men do. We fix problems all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We love to fix problems. We love to carry these things. And so it's like, hey, look at all the indicators that are going off in your life and your emotions are literally begging for you to address them. And imagine how empowering that is. Like I had a client for about 5 years, and he got so bored because we put out so many of his emotional fires that he actually started looking forward to these really risky conversations with other contractors where he could lose lots of money if the deal didn't go well. And we would kind of get really, really truthful about what was going on, how, all the different angles that this conversation could go. I would teach him what these people are thinking and why they're reacting to him this way. And I taught him how to go in and ask a lot of questions. And he would come out of there as if he had just gone skydiving, because this emotional roller coaster that he just put himself through, and he was able to manage himself and stay composed. And no matter what option these contractors were giving him, he was able to take them on a journey, help them get what they wanted, and also he was able to get what he wanted because he was managing his ego. He put his pride in
Mm.
check. He was there to serve. He was there to understand. He was there to be understood. He was patient. He was asking questions. He was stoic. He wasn't reacting negatively. He wasn't getting defensive and critical, and all the stuff that we do in these like risky, high value situations. And he comes out of there and he's like, "Oh my gosh. Like I can't believe I just did that." And I'm like,
Mm.
"Dude, this is the power of you being able to manage your emotions and then not taking everybody else's emotions as your responsibility or becoming reactive to their emotions." And this plays out in so many ways. And so, if we're trying to encourage men or young men to do this work, it's like, look, we can stay in the extrinsic world where, hey, if you know these tactics, strategies, tools, it's going to help you produce some amazing results, and you can love yourself along the way and
Mm.
romance yourself through this whole experience in all the seasons that you have as a man, knowing that, hey, you have 7 kids, dream house, dream life, and now you're laying in bed completely broken. You can't do anything. You can't even shower for yourself. And now all of a sudden I have the tools and I have to pick up and literally start reusing my hand that was like this from my accident.
Mm.
And it's like, how am I ever going to do anything again? Like I couldn't even feed myself. And these mental tools have helped me get as far as I've gotten, and I've got a long ways to go still. But you can be exposed to anything and still get the best results because you know how to manage these emotions and share them in real time with those around you. Like I sent my wife a text this morning that was super vulnerable about all the feelings I had about a particular situation. And I'm
Mm.
not trying to make them her fault or anybody's fault. I was just sharing, hey, this is where I'm at. And she's like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea. And now all of a sudden, I'm in a way powerfully showing myself and getting vulnerable to where she could totally crush me.
Mm.
But
Mm.
she's holding space for me, and that's amazing. And I'm holding space for myself just to have these experiences. And this is what's waiting for all of us. And
Yep.
I'm excited to see, what you and I do or who we can help.
Yeah.
And I'm here for all of it. And I there's lots of things I don't have figured out, but the tools are universal and they're so powerful, so powerful.
They're so powerful. And Glenn, I feel like from the men's perspective, like as men, you want to be protectors, right? Like that is that masculine energy, is to protect and provide. And I think the best thing you can do to protect and provide for yourself and for your family is to do your own work and do your own healing and get in touch with these emotions. So actually, if we're talking about how to be the most successful man out there, it's to deal with the shit that's going on in your heart first,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Wow.
like you said, it sounds simple. It's really hard. It's
It
not
is.
easy, but it's the most rewarding work you can do. It's it's way better than a BMW or a Porsche or a
Mm,
freaking jet or anything that the world can buy. And those things are fun. I love going fast and having fun and having experiences. But to
mm,
sit with myself and process and do the work as often as time will permit, there's nothing more rewarding because essentially what you're doing is you're coming home to yourself. Like
yep.
you're unlearning
Mm,
what the world has put on you. And if you
mm,
have a faith in God or a higher power, you're really just communing with that source of light and truth. And and it is there's just nothing better. Like it's the sweetest
mm.
fruit to have that connection with yourself, and then you start creating connections in other people, hopefully your spouse and your kids, and having a real impact for people who are having all these human experiences and they don't know how to navigate it yet.
Oh my gosh. I'm doing this coaching program where they talk about how, and so I've said this on previous podcasts because I'm just going through it myself right now,
Yeah.
and how we're human beings, right? So we have two sides to us, the human and the being. And so it talks about how the human is our mind and our soul, and on the being side, that's our spirit. And that's like our connection with God, energy, light. And how the whole idea of the program is to get us more in tune with our being side, and to be aware when we're in our human tendencies. And they talk about the ego. A big part of the human mind and where we get stuck is in our ego. And they use this, what is it, acronym is the right word, where they say ego stands for edging God out. And so
Yeah.
that's like what you were just talking about, made me think of that. Like when we edge God out, that's where we see all these problems. But like you said, when we can commune and tap into that light source and that being side of things, right? There's just so much more peace in ourselves, within our lives. And so again, it takes being aware and being able to process these human emotions and these things to be able to experience this peace and this goodness that's out there, you know? So wow, it's really beautiful. And I
Right.
love seeing you. I was just going to say, I love seeing you in real time, even process these things yourself and apply it to like what you're currently going through and showing emotion. Like, good, right? Like, this is helping it not stay trapped and buried, you know? It's huge.
Absolutely. There's I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm okay to
Yeah.
shed tears even in the gym or wherever. I do protect myself, and I do try to
Mm-hmm.
keep things positive but be real. And yeah, I guess in real time we got a little vulnerable today and we showed some emotions, and I hope that empowers people to realize like I didn't die. Nobody is going to judge me for this. In fact, they'll probably
Mm,
admire it and feel inspired by the courage that it takes to show emotions and not make it mean. Whatever you're going to make these emotions mean, like it really is okay.
for
Really is
sure. We're
okay.
the one that places meaning on things. And
Yeah.
so we can give it a different meaning. Um, So you just finished your book, right? Before we hopped
Yes.
on, you told me that you just finished your book. So just before we end today, because we did talk last time about what you do and you coach men. And so let's give a little bit, hopefully, like I said, go and check out that first episode if you haven't seen it, because I want men to be able to find you. If they're feeling stuck and they need this help, you do coaching. So you can briefly share about that if you want. But I want to hear a little bit
Yeah.
about your book and what's it about and when can we expect it to come out? What's it called? I just want people to be able to find it when it's ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the window here. And the premise of the book was after my own like peak experience where I came off of a bodybuilding show. I won 100 grand, and I kind of, after the party of all that celebratory stuff died down, I had kind of a pit or a funk experience where I had this thought, I guess that's the best I'll ever do.
Mm.
And I started feeding this sad side of like, wow, that was really amazing. And I came across a Tony Robbins documentary, I'm Not Your Guru, or something like that on Netflix. And he's coaching a couple in the documentary, and he's teaching them how to reclaim their masculine feminine dynamic in the relationship. And there's a longer version of the story, but the premise is he told this couple that if they will heal the boy, the man will emerge. And I'm sitting at work, working 3 jobs still, and that sentence just hit me, and I didn't know what it meant, but I knew that's the work I had to do. And so that was in 2017. We're 8 years down the road from that, and the book is called Heal the Boy, Forge the Man. And it's this idea of doing this intrinsic work, going into the cave and getting to know yourself, and providing yourself this hero's journey where it's like, hey, there are so many valuable things waiting for you, and you can literally write your story. You can write your own paycheck if that's what's important to you. And this essentially is just inspiring and giving men permission to do some of this deeper work, where if they will heal the weak, broken parts of them, and if they can process the regrets and the fears that they have about being a man, then all of a sudden all the things that they have broken in their life become the value that they offer. The book
Mm.
cover, I may have shown you in the last podcast.
No, I
I
don't.
didn't.
Well, I don't think so. I don't know if we saw this. Oh my gosh,
So
is that what's that Japanese pottery? Do you know what I'm talking
yeah,
about?
it's yeah, it's called kintsugi, right?
Yes, there you go. Oh yeah, I see it on the bottom. That's exactly it. Yes. Oh, that's
So
huge.
so I'm laying in bed summer of 2023, stuck on my phone. It's literally, sadly, all I could do is that or sleep. And I
Mhm.
I came across this image, and I'm sure I had seen kintsugi before, but I had never connected with something so powerfully, because in a real way I was just broken pieces all over the ground. And what I learned from this one piece of art is that as we rebuild, it becomes beautiful. Like all the stuff
Mm.
that I have like broken in my life or with other people,
Mm.
like that's what this represents to me, physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. Now I have all these powerful lessons and stories to share. And so what's really cool, if men will do this work, they can pick up all the things that they have made that are fractures and weaknesses, and then their scars become very, very beautiful. It becomes
Mm.
the value they give back to the world. And the really double punch of this is when you go through this process, Kintsugi says that the bowl is even stronger than it was before. And so the analogy is obvious to see, but for the sake of explaining it, for men and women, as you guys put your lives back together and process and overcome the challenges that you've been through, you get stronger as you go through it. So
Mhm.
stop avoiding it and go through it. And
Mm.
the premise of the book, it's not going to be able to teach you how to do this, but it's going to give you lots of points of what you can consider, where to go, and you're just going to get to create your own map based on your compass and your North Star. And it's just encouraging people to go heal, go forge. I heard a scripture the other day where I think it's in, what's the last book in the Bible in the Old Testament? Malachi, maybe?
Oh, I don't even know. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not good with I'm not good with Bible quiz.
I think it talks about this, the man who's forging silver is sitting with it. And I've studied a little bit of forging. I'm not a forger by any means with silver or metal, but there's a point when you're heating up metal where you're getting rid of the impurities.
Mm.
And if the metal won't release the impurities, that metal goes into the heap pile. It's a garbage pile. So if men and women want to be instruments in the hand of God, they've got to sit in the tension of the heat and the
Mm.
billowing of the air and the pressure and the smacking and the bending. And what's really cool is I believe God sits with that. And this is where it gets really, really powerful with silver. The exact point you remove it out of the heat is when you see your image in it.
Mm.
So the lesson could be that God is sitting with us and he's applying the right pressure or allowing the right pressures of our life, and that pressure will forge us. It'll purify us to the point where we start to receive his image. And at that
Mm.
point we have become refined. And maybe this process happens several times in life, obviously. But that's the premise of the book, just challenging, educating, hopefully inspiring. There's some funny stories in it, some really meaningful ones that are not just, this isn't a book about Glenn, it's a book about people and other men and their
Mm.
experiences. And it's, I don't know, we'll see how it all turns out, right? But that's the premise of the book.
Oh my God. I had massive chills when you were just speaking about that last part. Wow. I cannot wait to read this. I think this is much needed, right? Bringing this book to the world is very needed and powerful. Like heal the boy, forge the man. I wrote it down because that is
It was
huge.
so hard, Lindsay, because I had this idea in September of 2022, and then I
Mm,
almost died again in June of
mm,
2023. And so the hardest part about this book is I had to relive this freaking book like in
mm,
real time. And it was like everything that I am as a man was seemingly stripped away. And I
mm.
was stuck, like just broken in all the ways. And it was just the most powerful experience that has forever changed me. And I'm still climbing my way out, so to speak. But it's just, I know this book's powerful. I know it's going to help people just open up a little bit. And that's all I can ask for is give them some
For
encouragement to do it.
sure. For sure. And your part about God uses this to help us become, the people that we're meant to be and to live out our purpose here. And I think that there is a, purpose to our pain and what's that other term, that our mess can become our message. Like I think those things are so, so true. It's only when we go through these experiences that we're able to forge and rise and overcome. So wow, I don't know, incredible. I can't wait to read it. So I think it's going to be super inspiring and much needed. So you, hopefully, I don't know, the editing, that you don't have a date yet, right? That it's going to be released.
I don't. It could be 2 or 3 months from now, and I
Yeah.
can keep you
Okay.
posted, and maybe we
Yeah,
do round
for
three
sure.
once it's ready or something, right? We'll come back on
That
the
would be
show.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yes, part 3 once the book comes out. That
yeah,
would be great. That would be lovely. Well, I will post your social media info and your website maybe for
yeah,
people to find you with the
yeah,
coaching in the show notes, because I think again there's so many men out here that are going to watch this and be able to relate to this and also need help, right?
yeah.
um
And a message
healing themselves.
and a message to the gals, like maybe you're hoping and wanting and longing for your husband to do some of this work. And so even
Mm.
if you're not a guy, schedule some time with me and I'll help you come up with your own unique plan on how to inspire him from a loving way to help him start making these steps. Like I have all kinds of things that'll help both men and women depending on where they're at. So I'm happy to help.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that. Oh, that's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, I have an
Wow.
opt-in. I have an opt-in or what's called like a short little document to share with gals, and it's called my first 5 tips and strategies to help your husband be more open to coaching and personal development. And I
Wow.
have podcasts that are literally telling these men, "Hey, here's what your wife really wants and why." And if these gals will be
Mm.
like, "Hey, here's what I'm going through," I'm happy to record a unique podcast just for them and then generalize it and then obviously have these gals listen to the episodes and then be like, "Hey, Gary, listen to this and then I want to talk to you about it." And we can do this in
Wow.
a way like I'm happy to team up with you and help you kind of
Yeah.
warm this up so that it doesn't go negative. Like I'm here to
Mm.
help. essentially, man or woman, like, let's go,
Oh my God, I love that. Oh, I had no idea that you do that. That's huge. I
Yeah,
mean, because a lot of times that might be what it takes for
it
the
is.
man to reach out, right? Is
Yeah,
to hear that from their wife. Yeah. That's or at least she's the one that reaches out and then hears it from this podcast, right? Like that's
yeah,
very I love that. That's huge.
yeah.
Yeah. Whatever we can
I call it going behind enemy lines. I'm just being playful, but it's like, hey, I'm here
whatever
to
we can
help.
do to reach
Whatever
people.
we can do to reach
Whatever we
people.
can do to reach people. Seriously.
Absolutely.
Well, Glenn, I don't know. I just every time I listen to you sit in your presence, I'm just moved. I truly am. I mean, when we met back in January, I was just, I don't know, very touched meeting you and hearing your story and then bringing you on the first time and being able to, share more of your personal stories. So again, can't wait for part 1 of this. And then just diving deeper on this topic
Yeah,
specifically when it comes to masculinity. I just, every time I hear you talk, there's so much wisdom that
yeah,
comes from it. And it's so much that I learn. And so I hope others, have learned a lot from this too. And really, what we're trying to do is save lives and help people heal and change lives. And so we're just the vessel, right? Like we're just the vessel here. Um, but I hope that truly people listening to this and men and women, their wives, that they feel inspired by this and that hope and healing are possible. It's the whole goal.
yep, I agree.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I
Hey, you're
appreciate it.
welcome. Love you, Lindsay. Talk to you
Yeah.
soon.
Okay. Hopefully part 3 when your book comes out.
Let's go.
We'll set that up.